time we certainly are in need of his spirit, of his word. Um, we certainly need to have an understanding. The day that we're living in is it's a very difficult day. He said that as we approach the end, that if he doesn't shorten those days, that the very elect would not make it, and that is troubling. Sometimes I think we don't take it to heart what the word is saying. We sometimes we just play with it. We're not sincere. Many of us have the spirit or the mentality. I can take it or leave it. Sometimes it sounds good. He even says in Ezekiel, I believe it's the 33rd chapter, and he says they'll hear the word and they'll say, "Oh, it sounds good" and everything, but they're not going to be obedient. They're they're not going to keep the word. It's just something that sounds good, something that they can tolerate when the going is good, and when the going's not good, or sometimes they tolerate it when the going's not good. And that's when the Most High gets their attention. That's when Jesus will get their attention, is when things are not good. As soon as he turns things around and there's improvement on life, and they seem to get the some of those prayer requests are answered. Some of the things they are seeking after him for, those needs are provided, and then they just kind of drift away. But we are. It's very important that we keep a clear mind, clear heart, stay focused, and walk in the light. And that light that we're to walk in is having an understanding, revelation of the word. Soon as you look to your faith, you look to your faith. You understand. Um, those of us who have His Spirit, and we're walking with the Spirit. Um, you open the book and you read it. As soon as you engage, we have to understand that this is a historical book. It goes back for generations. Um, just the very gospel, when we share it, when we share what he did for us. When we share how we were regenerated and born again, and we share the power of his spirit in our life. Um, and then you have to tell them who he is. Well, you're going back a number of years, you're going back some generations, to get an understanding of who he is. Because, and we're looking, those of us who are alive today, we believe that his return is imminent. And I know that that's been said for hundreds of years. Even in Paul's day, they even thought he was coming, in that day. And then Paul had to tell us in Thessalonians, don't think it's going to be anytime soon. He said that day is not coming anytime soon. But um, every generation has anticipated his return being imminent in their day. In the day of salvation, when they get born again of water and spirit, they hear the redemption story, and people, when you're walking with them, everybody believes he's coming in that day. You can just go back 100 years in the history of this country, and you see some of the things that was going on at that time, and there was people living in that time that certainly thought that his return was imminent, that it would be in their day. And you go back 100 years, and I'm sure they felt you look at the course of history, and you see all the things that has been upon man. And so we're not, as far as having that spirit and that sense of urgency and walking with him, we relate to those who have gone before us, because as they felt it was imminent in their day, we feel it's imminent in our day. We really believe that, and what we can look at as an anchor is some of the prophecies and some of the things that Jesus shared and what the prophets shared. We can look at that and try to get an understanding and piece that with what has happened, not only in today, but going back in, history of this country, history of the fourth beast, because that certainly is a part of the end time. It would be foolish for someone to think that his return is imminent and then not even understand the prophecy of the beast and the beast system. And sometimes when we look at Revelation, and a lot of time it's a book that needs to be studied with the Spirit, having the spirit of understanding. That's how we study that book. But you can't study that book without knowing history. If you just discard history and you go and study Revelation, you'll never be able to piece it together or to understand it. In fact, a study of Revelation takes you back to the prophet Daniel. It takes you back to Jesus Christ. It takes you back to the prophet Daniel. It takes you back to the history of nations. And so one thing that we have to, anybody that is believing that his return is imminent and it's in our day, then we need to have a real good course study on the history of nations. And if we can't see that, then we're no different. I mean, we're like our ancestors that before us, that was born of the water and spirit, born into the body of Jesus Christ. Even in the days of the apostles, they thought he was coming in their day. Every generation, they think he's coming in their day and in their time. And that's why it's important to have the spirit of understanding. And first, I want to go to Jeremiah 3 and 15. And he says, I will give you shepherds according to my heart, which shall feed you with knowledge and understanding. The purpose of having a watchman, a shepherd, it says pastor here, but in the original writing, the Hebrew writings, even in the Greek Septuagint, it's shepherd. But the reason why he gives you a shepherd, the shepherd has to feed. It is a diet. It is a diet that he puts you on, a nutritional diet, and that diet there then is to give you an understanding. Gives you understanding, gives you knowledge. We cannot run from knowledge. We should not be intimidated by knowledge. The prophet Hosea says, my people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge, and because there was no research and study into his law, his commandments, there was no deep study into his word, and they just kind of set it aside. It's been a part of Israel's history to set the word aside and not look at it in its right rightful perspective. We must be very careful in this day as we approach the end. I believe it's close because of the history of nations and what's going on and the awakening of Israel. Um, um, we we have to be careful because if all of my if any of my relationship with him is without knowledge or understanding, then you can be easily deceived. If if your walk with him is not according to knowledge, if your walk with him is not according to understanding, then you can be easily deceived. And when we step away from knowledge and understanding, the understanding is the light. That's the only thing that's going to keep us on the path. We talked about the other day, and I'll be saying more about it. How when the devil and that serpent Satan was kicked out of heaven, what did the angels in heaven do? They rejoiced. Yeah, they had a good time. Yeah. When he got kicked out, it said the heavens rejoiced. They was glad to see him go. Oh, I'm so glad I'm glad he's gone. And I'm sure they praised the Most High. They were just happy and they rejoiced because that old serpent, the devil, Satan, was gone. And you know who else was gone? All of those who got caught up under his cape. He was caping through heaven trying to get as many as he can, and he got a third that followed him. That's a lot of power to take somebody, to dethrone somebody from heaven. Now, we have no idea what heaven's like. Nobody here has no idea what heaven's like. So for them to be there and to be dethroned and kicked out, there's some beautiful places we see here on earth. We see the sunrise, the rays of the sun. We see the blue of the water. We see the whiteness of the moon. We see the sky, the reflection. We see the mountain and the hill. We see the changes of the season. We see the life springing up from the earth. We see the creation, the procreation of man. We see all of that. The waterfalls, the mountain tops, the setting sun, the horizon, the color scheme on the rocks when the sun is setting and the heat and all of that, and we kind of count things for the beauty of it, but nothing on earth can even compare. So they've been demoted, severely demoted. We look around here at earth, we think, oh, isn't this beautiful? Isn't this lovely? But they've been demoted, and then he says in that verse in Revelation 12:12. Then he said, woe to who? The inhabitants of the earth. Y'all in trouble. Everybody on earth. Nobody's off base. Nobody. Not a king, not a queen, not a teacher, not a preacher, not a lay person, the laity, office holders, not the president, not cabinet, any nation, the hierarchy of any nation. It don't matter where you go. Nobody is untouchable. Nobody. And if we think that we can outmaneuver and out-finesse Satan, then he's got you. You're in his trap. You're in his snares. And it's sad because a lot of people within the church, quote unquote church, a lot of people in the quote unquote church is just playing around. They're just playing around. And they don't know the extent, the damage that's being caused when they allow the devil to take control of their life. They don't know the extent of the damage. He can cause a lot of damage. And if Jesus doesn't repair it, you'll never be the same. You got some folks that will never be. I'm talking about in the church now. I'm not talking about out in the world. I'm talking about in the church. I'm talking about in the church amongst so-called saved people who allow themselves to be deceived by the devil and the damage that he can cause. You have a lot of folks in church that's damaged. And they're not damaged from people on the outside. It ain't people on the outside that came in to damage them. It's people on the inside. Right in the church that can cause a great deal of damage to people. And sometimes we just, we'll laugh it off, we'll pray it off, we'll ask for forgiveness, we ask for some reparation, some mending, fix it, Jesus, fix it. We're crying out, asking him to fix it. But there's some things that can be done to saints and people in the church, some damage that if Jesus don't take it away, it's there for the rest of your life. It's there for the rest of your life. And so who then is going to have to pay for that? Somebody's going to have to pay. It used to be before Jesus came, for every sin, there had to be some bloodshed. But then Jesus comes and he sheds his blood. He ain't going back to the cross, y'all. He's not going back. He said there's no more sacrifice for sins. So if you have somebody who sins and there's no reparation, there's no attempt to repair the damage, then that spilt blood, then what happens? What happens to that spilt blood? See, there's things that we say and do, we're unwise. We're unwise. And the reason why we do a lot of things is because we're in our flesh. That's the only way the devil can get you, is when you're in your flesh. You walking in your flesh, he can hook you. And he's got the beats, he's got the lyrics, he's got the moves, he knows how to shake, he knows how to do all of that. And he can hook you if you're in your flesh. So he says, I'm going to give you shepherds that their job is to feed knowledge and understanding. And how often do you eat? Maybe that's a good question to ask. How often do you eat? Have you just had one meal this year? This is on the Greco-Roman calendar. We're in the 5th month now. You got 4 complete months. We're in the 5th month now. So how often do you eat? Now, I know us, so I don't want to hear you can go on a diet. Your diet consists of 3 square meals. That's my diet. I'm going to cut out the snacks. I'm going to go on a diet. I'm going to cut out the snacks. I'm going to cut out dessert. I'm on a diet. Explain your diet. I'm just down to 3 square meals. No snacks and no desserts. But when he says, I'll give you shepherds, if you can't hear your shepherd, and if there's no knowledge or understanding, one of 2 things. Either the shepherd's not feeding, or you're just not eating. One or 2 things. Either the shepherd's not feeding, or you're not eating. But at the end of the day, everybody's going to have to give an account for themselves at the end of the day. So he says, I to eliminate all these excuses, I want to make sure that you are um, you have a good diet, and what that diet is to consist of. When you look at knowledge and understanding, that diet that is consisted of must be the word. It has to be the word, and it has to be his word. We don't need philosophers of men. We don't need that. I don't need no Socrates. I don't need that. I don't need no great philosopher. I don't need somebody that has their own. Maybe somebody can look up that word, syncretism. Syncretism. We don't need syncretism. We don't need somebody injecting their beliefs or their culture into this book, into the body of Christ. We don't need that. We already have. I don't need syncretism. So the either you are getting you're getting the word that gives you knowledge and understanding. And didn't Paul say he warned about the philosophy of men? Didn't he say that? That's in one of his letters that he wrote. Beware of philosophy of men. All these philosophers doing all this talking, but ain't got no word. So that's not what we need. We need, because the knowledge and the understanding we're going to get comes from the word. And when the word has to be fed unto you, but if you don't come to get fed, you're going to die on the vine. You're going to die. Maybe not physically, but spiritually, there's not going to be no life in you. And maybe that's why you can't overcome nothing. Maybe that's why you're still dealing with some of the things you dealt with 5 years ago, 10 years ago, still dealing with it. Suffering from spiritual malnutrition. That old SA-10, he'll get you caught up in a presentation, smoke and mirrors, lights, cameras, action, get you all caught up in that, and you think you had church and can't whip a prayer out of a wet paper bag. Can't beat the devil, can't have no control over your flesh. That's why some folks can go to a spiritually uplifted service, Sunday service, spiritual service, and the next day cussing somebody out, lying. Go home and lie. Man, you was just in a service, weren't you? Just went to church, didn't you? Folks can't stop lying. In 2 Peter, the 2nd chapter, he says they can't cease from sin. They can't stop sinning. Oh, that must be a sinner. Yeah, but he says they feast with you, which means they come in to eat and get a diet with you, but they can't stop sinning. Can't stop sinning. If you can't stop sinning, the book says you don't have no word in you. You ain't born of the word. Because it says in John, whosoever born of the word does not sin. It's almost close to that if I didn't quote it. Yeah, it's pretty close to that. You got to be born of the word. Huh? He cannot sin. So if folks are coming to church and then turn around sinning, you ain't got no word in you. And if you don't have no word, I was going to say it, maybe I should say it. The lack of knowledge means you're ignorant. You just ignorant. Because if you don't have no word, it's that word that brings knowledge. and brings understanding. And that's why you want to please your flesh so much. Everything the flesh wants to do. And Paul said that in my flesh, there ain't no good thing. I don't know why you think you so much. That flesh ain't nothing. That flesh is going back to the ground from which it came. Your soul now is going to spend eternity somewhere. That soul is going to get a new body. And it's going to spend eternity somewhere. Jesus said in St. John 5 that, let's go there real quick. St. John 5 and verse number 28. St. John 5:28, he says, marvel not at this, for the hour is coming in the which all that are in the grave shall hear his voice. All that are in the grave. All that are in the grave. Good and the bad. And shall come forth they that have done good unto the resurrection of life. And they that have done evil unto the resurrection of damnation. So everybody is going to, that flesh that you're trying to please, that's just going back to the ground. It has a shelf life. Your flesh is not even designed to live. I mean, if you live past 100, you got a few folks live past 100. Rarely do they get to 120. He slashed the years, he cut them down. Most people, you live 70. 70 years is not a long time. So this flesh has a shelf life. He said the spirit goes back to the Most High who gave it. He said that soul goes to sleep. That soul's going to go to sleep, but it's going to be resurrected. In its order, because everybody's not coming back at the same time, but in its order, that soul is going to be resurrected, and you're going to stand and give an account for yourself. And it's a scary thing, because if you're not knowledgeable of this, and if you don't have an understanding of good and evil and the soul that sinneth, it's going to die, and you keep want to satisfy your flesh, and you keep want to do all that, and you're lacking that understanding, then that's going to be on you. It's not going to be on me, because I'm telling you, everybody here in this assembly ain't saved. Everybody here ain't saved. And I ain't going to stand here and tell you that you are. Hebrews 13. First, before I go to Hebrews 13, let's go to 1 Thessalonians 5. 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 12. Let me go there first. 1 Thessalonians 5:12. And we beseech you, brethren, to know them which labor among you and are over you in the Lord, over you in Jesus Christ, in his body. He has order in his body. That are over you in the Lord, and what? Admonish you. So he says, you ought to know them. You ought to know them. Whoever the feeder is, whoever the shepherd is, that's feeding with knowledge and understanding, you better know them. You better know them. And if you ain't, every soul, every child, I mean, I'm just thinking of me. You think of you, but I'm thinking of me. If I'm not getting what I need, if I'm not getting knowledge and understanding that I need to make it in this day, well, I'm going to start looking at interviews. I'm going to hunt. I'm going to find. I'm going to ask him. I'm going to say, Father, you got to give me a shepherd. You must give me somebody that can feed me with knowledge and understanding. I got to have it. And I would search for it. Anybody here, if you don't know me, and if you're not getting fed with knowledge and understanding, you better start searching. Better start searching. Because the most important thing you got is your soul. And that soul is going to spend eternity somewhere. His soul's coming back now. He says, and admonish you. And then verse 13. So if you don't want to know the feeder, you're walking in your flesh. That's like sin. I don't want to know him. I don't even like him. Well, you better get to stepping. Save yourself from this untoward generation. Save yourself. Get to stepping. I don't know him. I don't even like him. Don't go to hell. I mean, I don't want to go to hell for nobody. I have to give my family if I have to. I ain't going to hell for nobody. I was given that ultimatum. He says here, to esteem them very highly in love for what? Because of the work that they're putting in. The work that they're putting in. What's the work they put in? Number one, it could be an all-night prayer meeting. Man, you ain't sleeping with it. Gotta pray. Spirit ain't right. Something's not right. Putting that work in, praying, fasting. Study, because the book says, study to show yourself approved. I'm not trying to show myself approved unto you. I got to show myself approved unto the Most High. That's what he said. Study to show yourself approved unto the Most High. And it says, rightly dividing the word of truth. So how do you rightly divide? To study and to rightly divide takes time. It is a work. It's a work. Paul told Timothy, he said, those that desire the office of a bishop, what? Desires a good work. Because it takes work. It takes work. So the book is saying, now you need to have some esteem and love for them for what the work that they're putting in. And the work that they're putting in is to guide you and to teach you and to feed you with knowledge and understanding so that you might have eternal life. I can't give you eternal life. Paul told the Corinthians in 1 Corinthians 11 chapter, he said, follow me as I follow Christ, because eternal life is in Christ. And that's why they said you better know him. And Paul says, follow me as I follow Christ. And then he says, be at peace among yourselves. Should be some shalom, some peace in here. Should be. Because I wanted to announce today, I don't know, maybe I'll just back up a minute. Just back up a minute. Because I was going to announce that we're just going to go ahead and celebrate our Shavuot and Pentecost on the 23rd. And everybody bust your bread in your house. I was going to announce that tonight. Because if we come together to break bread and have a feast, and there's divisions amongst us, That's how folks get killed. Read 1 Corinthians 11th chapter when he was talking about the communion of the Lord. He was talking about the communion of the body of Christ. If we come together at Passover, unleavened bread, Shavuot, Pentecost, and we're breaking bread in a festivity and everything, and you have division and discord and hatred for one another, that's why folks are sick and folks are dying. Because people want to live in their flesh. You want to live in your flesh? I'd rather say, no, y'all break your bread and bust your bread at home so you can stay safe. Because if we come together and there's divisions, and this one can't get along with this one, and we still struggling with stuff, stay home. Stay home. I'm going to eat my meal. I sure will. So Hebrews 13 and 17. Hebrews 13, 17. He says, obey them that have the rule over you and submit yourselves. Why? Why do I want to? In order to obey, you have to listen to them. So the obedience and the submission, the reason why is because they're watchmen and they're watching for the soul. And it's not an easy job. It's work. It's not an easy job. A lot of people, their bodies go through so much. You know why? Because they want the perfect assembly. They want people to love and to be together and have a good time and just no sin. And I mean, that's what you want. That's what you're feeding for. That's what you're feeding, knowledge, understanding, to whip that devil. Not to get whooped by him, but to whip him. And every pastor they want the church to be holy, because he says his church now, it's not a physical building, and it's got people here and there and everywhere, because a lot of people think that their church is the only church that's saved. I don't believe that. But he says that the church it's going to be presented to him, his bride. It's going to be holy, without blemish. And you know what else it says? Anybody else knows what it says? Without spot or blemish or what? Any such thing. And that any such thing is what's going to cause a lot of people to miss out. Any such thing. What we read in Thessalonians is one of those any such things. That's a sin, not getting along with your pastor, not knowing your pastor, not getting along with your pastor, don't like your pastor. You better get out of here so you can stop sinning. I'm serious. Your soul is at stake. Why are you playing with your soul? I'm telling you, you play too much. Y'all playing. Why play with your soul? You're the one that's going to lose. I'm going to get him. Who you think you getting? I'm just going to make sure nothing goes down. Who are you? And how did that get out there that something was going to go down? Where did that come from? Didn't come from me. He says, for they watch for your soul and they must give an account. Notice now it says they, because sometimes in your walk with him, you might have more than one pastor. Some of us I've had several pastors that's going to say something about me. And like it says here, I hope he does it with joy and not with grief. Because when he gives an account of me, and I've had several pastors, but when he gives an account of me, if it's out of grief and not joy, if I cause them grief, if I was the cause of them losing sleep, if I was the cause of them not eating properly, if I was the cause of them having a heart full of sorrow, sometimes our pastors die at young ages, and it's because of the people. It's because of the people. He says if he doesn't do it with joy, but he does it with grief, that ain't unprofitable for the preacher. That's unprofitable for you. That's who it's unprofitable for. That person, that individual that's causing grief. And I ain't everybody's pastor. And you don't need to be stepping up in here if I ain't your pastor. Because you ain't got nothing to say or do about any church business here. I ain't your pastor. Folks don't know you're playing around too much. You guys are playing, you don't know what you're playing with. You're playing with your soul. And you don't like what I'm saying? Get your pastor. I don't know why you coming up here. I ain't your pastor. Why you coming up in here? Well, he's fussing. But it's got to be profitable for you that the report is given. I worked with them. We're not going to agree on everything. What was it? Paul and Barnabas. Paul and Barnabas had a falling out. I mean, they fell out. And they said the contention was so sharp that Barnabas went his way, Paul took Silas. They went another way. But before he got to the end of his life, they reconciled. Because Paul at one time was concerned, after all I'd done, all these missionary journeys, I myself would be a castaway. Now, if Paul was uncertain, what about you? What about you? So I want to go to Matthew, and this is the parable, and verse number 18. Matthew 13, verse 18. We know the parable, but I want to go to the explanation that Jesus gives us. Because when it talks about feeding with knowledge and understanding, what is fed to you is the word. That is the seed. Because where's that verse at? It's in 1 John, where it says, if you're born because the seed remains in him. Where's that at? That's in 1 John. Somebody could find that. Let me go there first, and then I'm going to go back. Then we'll come back to Matthew 13 and 18. But it's in 1 John. Is that it? Yes. 1 John 3 and 9. That's it. Whosoever is born of God, born of the Most High, Elohim, whosoever born of God doth not commit sin. Does not commit sin. I'm saved. I'm born again, water and spirit. If you are, then you better stop sinning. Otherwise, you lying on the book. And at the end, who you think's gonna win? This word or you? Whosoever is born of God doth not commit sin. And the reason why he doesn't is why? For his seed remaineth in him. That seed is the word. The seed is the word that the shepherd is to be sowing or giving you a diet of, so that that word can get in you, because if the word remain in you, then you're not going to sin. So if anybody is sinning or sinneth, that means the word is not activated, is not alive in their life. That seed, do you know a seed has life in it? It has life in it. So you have to plant it in the ground. And in Hosea 10 and 12, I think it is, he says, sow unto you righteousness. It says, break up your fallow ground. So that fallow ground has to be broken up so that the seed, when the sower comes by and he's sowing out the seed, if that ground has been broken up, if it's been tilled and it's been broken up, it's been plowed. So when the sower comes out and he's sowing the seed, that seed can get into the ground and bring forth some life. Because the seed goes into the ground, and then it's the seed. Jesus gives us many examples and parables of the seed, but one example he gave us is the seed has to go into the ground and die. And what that means is he is the seed, or the word. He is the word of the Most High. The word was made flesh, dwelt among us. That seed has to go down in us. The death is the death of the flesh. And so life comes up. Then you have works of righteousness. You have the tree comes up, and then the tree starts bearing fruit. And there's 9 different fruit that you should have on your tree. But if the seed is not remaining in you, that's what causes people to sin. It's because the seed's not remaining. Because he says here, for his seed remaineth in him, and he cannot sin because he is born of Elohim. He's born of the Most High. So did he make a mistake when he gave birth to you? Did he make a mistake? No, I don't think he made a mistake. But he has obedient children, he has disobedient children, and he also has cursed children. He got some cursed children. Yeah, let's read that. 2 Peter chapter 2 and verse 14. 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 14. Having eyes full of adultery. Eyes full of adultery. Your eyes open, you got adultery in your mind. Close your eyes, you got adultery on your mind. Sleep, adultery. Wake up, adultery. Go to work, adultery. Come home, adultery. Eyes full of adultery. And he says, and that cannot cease from sin. He goes on saying, beguiling unstable souls. This can be leaders in the church. It also can be folks like the Laodicean church, the folks in the laity, And you got some folks that come in, they ain't hardly been saved but a minute, or just joined the church, ain't been here very long. And you already in their face, like he says here, beguiling unstable souls. Some folks, they ain't got the roots. They ain't even got planted in here good. And when new saints come in and we got people coming into church and being born again, their whole focus, you want to help them? Lead them to the pastor. Let them know the pastor. Don't let them know you. A heart they have exercise with covetous practices. And that covetousness is lust, lustful practices. And lust ain't always sex. Because as soon as you think of lust, you think of sex. Yeah, it's part of sex, but it ain't all just sex. Covet, because when he said, when Paul said in Romans 7:7, he said, I would not have known what lust was, except the commandment says, thou shalt not covet. And that commandment, thou shalt not covet, was the 10th commandment, and it was not to covet anything of your neighbors. And it's not all sex. Then it goes on like you see here. It says, cursed children. Oh, they were born again. They were. That's why these folks who are backsliders, they're the biggest fools. When you understand the book and you understand his word, he gave birth to them. They were born of the water, born of the Spirit, and then they conveniently backslide and they go on, I don't go to that church. I ain't saved. I ain't in church. They speak ignorantly. Because once he gives birth to you, you're a child. Now, you could be an obedient child. You could be a disobedient child. If anything, be disobedient and get your whooping and get straight. Because he said, the ones that I love, I chastise them. I'm a chastise you because I want to get you right. Don't be a cursed child. Don't be a cursed child. And you got a lot of folks, a lot of backsliders, and they don't realize because they use that convenient excuse. I ain't saved. I don't go to church anymore. They use that convenient excuse and they speak ignorantly. That's why he says, feed them with knowledge and understanding. Let them know. Once he gave birth to you, how many times did your mama give birth to you? How many times did you go back up in that womb and get born again? One time. Most of these mothers, they'll tell you, one time. It ain't going to happen again. One time. So what happens now is now you got to give an account for that life. You got to give account for that life. Well, I was so young and I didn't know what I was doing. Well, you better come up here and get some learning. This is the best life. I'm sorry. Or I shouldn't even say I'm sorry. I'm joy. This is the best life. Now, we make mistakes. I don't want to make it sound like, because I made mistakes. I don't want to make it sound like I'm infallible. I'm not infallible. But this is the best life because if you go wrong, you can get right. You just don't want to be a cursed child. You don't want to be cursed. Because he talks about how they, if you look at verse number 13, sporting themselves with their own deceivings while they feast with you. That means they're in the body, they're coming to the feast, they come into church, they eating with you, but they're cursed. Cursed. So that seed, I want to talk about that seed, how that seed has remained. That seed has to go in. That seed, as we see in Matthew 13 and verse 18, Jesus explains the parable of the sower and the seed. In verse 18, he says, "Hear ye therefore the parable of the sower." It says, "When anyone heareth the word of the kingdom and understandeth not." So a shepherd feeds with knowledge and understanding. The seed has to be planted. The seed has to get in. So if it's on the wayside, because the first one was on the wayside, he says when they hear it, they don't understand it. Now listen to this. "Then cometh the wicked and catcheth away that which was sown in his heart." It got in the heart. The seed or the word got in the heart. It was sown in the heart, which means the sower did his job. Teaching, knowledge, understanding, getting that word in. The sower did his job, even on the one that fell by the wayside. It fell by the wayside. It even got into the heart. The reason why the wicked was able to come and take it out is because they didn't understand. That's why it says you better know them that labor among you and deliver that word and admonish you. You better know them. Because if there's something you don't understand, oh, wait a minute. Give me understanding. I don't understand that. I don't understand that. What does that mean? What are you saying? Give me an understanding. But if you don't like the feeder, you might not understand something, but because you don't like the feeder, you don't come and get an understanding. So what happens? Well, here comes that wicked. Here comes the wicked. And the wicked can be in your own house. I don't know why you listen to him. That old wicked, they start feeding you stuff. I don't like that church. I don't even know why you go there. That old wicked start feeding you all kind of stuff. I don't know who he is. It's amazing how some of these people they're so knowledgeable, they know so much and have no responsibility. Ain't got nobody, can't even run your own house. That was one of the qualifications. He said, if you're going to be a leader in the church, you got to know how to run your own house first. For pastors, for shepherds, for deacons, you got to know how to run your own house first. So you ain't looking after nobody's soul. But you sure spreading a whole bunch of junk. So that seed that fell on the wayside, if you don't understand, because it said it got to the heart. Didn't it say that? It was sown in the heart. It was sown in the heart. The tragedy was you didn't get an understanding. You failed to get an understanding. And so the wicked can pull you, and sometimes you might not even be out of the church. You still going to the church, but you listen to that wicked one, and they didn't take that seed out. Because it says here, it was sown in his heart. This is he which receives seed by the wayside. The wicked was able to come and take that which was in your heart. So somehow it got to the heart, Because some of these other ones, it didn't even get to the heart. But this one, it got to the heart. It's very crucial to get an understanding of this book. Very crucial. And those who are his children, it's not grievous. It's not hard because we're his sons, his daughters. This is what we do. This is how we live. This is how I live my life. This is what he expects of me. He says in Romans 12:1 and 2, we don't have to go there, but he says, I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto him, which is what? Reasonable service. It ain't grievous, it's just reasonable. Having a clean heart is reasonable. That's just reasonable. In fact, we should want a clean heart. Because it says in Psalms, create in me a clean heart and renew a right spirit within me. I gotta have that. It's not dogmatic. Because Jesus said in the Beatitudes, he says, only those who have a pure heart are going to see him. He said, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Those are the only ones that's going to see him. So if your heart ain't pure, that's when you, like David was crying out, oh, you got to create in me a clean heart. You got to renew a right spirit. You got to work on me. Work on me. Then verse 20, but he that receives seed into stony places, the same is he that heareth the word. So they came to hear the word. And with joy, which means they received it with joy. Quickly. And you see that sometimes. You see people, they come in here and, oh man, this is it. Man, that's the best I heard. Oh man, I'm coming, man. I mean, just Annan. I mean, you know, I only read a few scriptures. Yeah, but it hit. I got it, man. Quickly, man. I got it. You understand? Oh, I understand it, man. Can you see? I see clearly. I mean, Annan, with joy, they receive it. But he says, because they have no root in themselves. Notice now, some people don't have self-discipline. Some people don't have self-respect. And we've got to teach our children, they got to respect themselves. And don't let nobody disrespect the children. Because you're trying to build some self-esteem in them. You got some children that get beat down all their lives from the cradle to the time they get into adult relationship. They think that a relationship consists of being beat down. Somebody that has no root in themselves, there's no self-respect, no self-discipline, no self-esteem. They don't value themselves. They don't see the importance of a productive lifestyle. This is so dangerous, people. Mothers, fathers, grandparents, this is so dangerous. Because that old deceiver, your 3, 4, 5-year-old child is not off base to that deceiver. We got wicked men and women preying on children. And then we got parents that allow our children, young girls, wearing all these tight clothes, showing everything. Young girls. Ain't even teenagers yet. And I know that's what the world's doing. But I'm sorry. No father that loves his daughter is going to parade her around like a little whore. I don't care. Get mad at me. My book tells me in Deuteronomy, fathers do not prostitute their daughters. That's in our law book. You going to have your daughter looking like all that junk out there? I mean, stuff like Cardi B and all that stuff should be, get rid of that junk. It's unbelievable. I mean, it's disheartening. It's incredulous that some of this, what they call music and art and all this stuff, and they have it out there in the media, and we give our children 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds, and they have access to all of this stuff out there, and they see all this stuff by Cardi B and whoever that other girl is, and all that stuff that they're doing, and they promote that filth. And a father don't have the guts to try to protect his daughter? That's a shame. That's a shame. It's just a shame. And our boys are turning out to be girls. Yeah, he's always been kind of like that. You better put a Tonka truck in his hand or put some boots on. Do something. He looking at, he always had an interest in high heel shoes. Better slap that mess out. We just let him go. Now he's 18 and so I haven't seen all these videos and all. I haven't even listened to the music. I hear about it and stuff, but I haven't. And then you got Lil Nas X. Is that who it is? Unbelievable. He's actually infatuated with the devil, his appearance of what the devil looks like. Infatuated with him, goes to hell on one of those poles like women do pole dancing on, goes to hell on one of them poles, and I haven't seen, I'm just going by what I heard, and then has sex with the devil. And that's a music with lyrics and a video stuff. And you don't want to put no restrictions on their phone? Oh, you don't want to. What's wrong with us? See, the devil's playing for keeps. Y'all don't realize it. He's playing for keeps. You the ones fooling around. He's playing for keeps. He gets these young kids locked in. When it talks about they have no root in themselves, there's all of that innocence has been destroyed. That's why some of these girls, they get older and stuff, and they get used by these boys. They just think that's just life. Because they've been taught that from growing up. No root in themselves. So they endure for a while. For when tribulation and persecution ariseth because of the word, by and by he is offended. Because this word, now if you get this word and you live according to this word, there is going to be some tribulation and there's going to be some persecution. That's going to come. That's unavoidable. He even says if we suffer with him, we what? We get to reign with him. But you got to suffer. And I know it. I get it. I'm right there with y'all, brothers and sisters. I don't like to suffer. I'll be honest with you. And I don't think if everybody in church was true and honest, you don't want to suffer. It's not that you haven't. You have suffered, but it ain't like you go out of here looking for suffering. Where's your address at? I'm going to Google suffering. Where's he at? I'm going to go try to find him. You don't do that. But we know that if we stay here a while, we're going to go through something. We're going to go through something. And those tests and trials, if you've got some root in yourself, somebody that has some self-control, when that word comes into them, into their heart, and that seed gets planted, when tribulation comes, because they've got some self-control and some self-esteem, they know how to endure. Somebody who runs every time trouble comes, they're on the run. What happened? Yeah, we got in an argument, so I ran. What happened on the job? Well, I didn't go right here, so I quit. What's going on with your? I can't be. I quit being a father. I mean, because you have no root in yourself, so whenever there's tests or trials come, you just give up. That's what he says here. They're offended. They can't stay. And then you have those who the seed is sown among thorns. So everybody hears the word. Even on the wayside, it was planted in the heart. You've got the stony ground. You got the thorns. He hears the word, but the cares of this world and the deceitfulness of riches. And, really, that's dealing with money. Most of it, we ain't going to get rich, y'all. Oh, I've heard a lot of those, how to get rich. Oh, let me tell you, in my lifetime, books, seminars, and everything on how to make money, how to make more money. But those who are, their whole goal in life is to be wealthy or to have riches. Even though you can hear the word, but that will come and choke the word out. Because gaining everything in this world and then losing your soul wasn't worth it. Just wasn't worth it. So the pursuit of some things. Now, if you are a self-disciplined person and you know the difference between right and wrong, and you can abstain from evil because you've got character, that's something we should be building in our children. It's that character, good character, so they can be rooted in themselves. There's things that you can pursue in life, and the deceitfulness of riches won't choke the word. Or even the ones who, where it was, the seed was sown on stony ground. Some people, pursue after sports, but if you're rooted in yourself and you got some root in yourself, who was that? AC Green that played for the Lakers. Anybody remember him? AC Green that played for the Lakers. Yeah, even though he was a professional basketball player, he kept himself until he got married. He didn't allow the deceitfulness of riches to destroy him because he had root in himself. He knew who he was. He respected his body. Not only did he respect his body, but he respected other women. And so he didn't get caught up in, because they said once you get to be an NBA player, man, it's over, man. But he was somebody that kept himself. There was a track star out of Des Moines, Iowa. She was an Olympian. Lolo Jones? Does that sound familiar? Lolo Jones, or somebody who's listening, they might know who I'm talking about. She's from Des Moines, Iowa, and she was an Olympian. I think she went to the Olympics. And anyway, even at the Olympics, and she kind of gave her story about how, you know, I mean, everybody knew she was a virgin, so it was very, um, it was difficult because the devil was just there to tempt her, to try to break her, to get her. I mean, after her heavy, but she kept herself. All the temptation and all the traps, because she would tell you some of the traps that they would set for her. Because that devil, I mean, he ain't gonna give up. He wants you to sin. He don't want our daughters to be virgins. He don't want our sons to be virgins. He wants you to sin. But she kept herself because she said she was going to keep herself till she got married. Now, I don't know if A.C. Green or Lolo Jones was born of the water and spirit. I don't know. But I think that's commendable. To have that root in yourself that, you know, a girl could respect her body to the point where, oh no, you can't touch this. I'm saving myself for marriage. I'm saving myself for when I get married. That's commendable. We should, and I'm not throwing shade and downing, you know, people, but we should, you know, honor people like that. I'm trying to find the right words. That should be like a testament that I don't care if you're a man and you can't tell me A.C. Green wasn't tempted. And he wasn't tempted with no ugly women. Because they was NBA and all that money. And Lolo Jones, I think I'm saying her name right. I might not be saying her name right, but we should have in our the problem that some of the problem is we're not teaching these values and morals in the home, and then people want to say, well, they'll go to church and hear it, and so they try to throw off on the church. Those values and morals and getting that root in yourself should be taught at home. That should be taught at home. Yeah, the church has to teach it. Yeah, we teach it here to abstain, but that should be taught in the home. Mothers teaching their daughters, fathers teaching their sons. That should be taught at home so that they can have that root in themselves, because life is going to bring a lot of tribulations, a lot of strife, a lot of persecution. That's going to come. But you can endure. And there's nothing wrong. That old devil, man, we used to sing that song as a child. That old devil, he's a sly old fox. If I could catch him, I'd put him in a box, lock him up, and throw away the key. Because look at how he glamorizes everything out there. Look at how the world is glamorized. Look at what our children are looking at. I mean, you can't, almost every commercial has a sexual theme to it. Almost every show, and the TVs are getting so bad now because, I mean, casual sex on scene and everything, oh, that's blase, blase. Now it's women with women and men with men. And they're bold with it. They're bold with it. Oh, you guys, y'all seen man with female, a man, y'all seen that. We've already exposed that to our children. Let's give them this. Male with male, female with female. And then it's transgender. That's a man. No, that ain't a man, that's a woman. No, that's They were born a male. No, you never convinced me she was born a male until you find out she was born a male. They have a transgender person in the House of Representatives, United States House of Representatives, and I think if I'm not mistaken, on Biden's somewhere in his cabinet or staff or somewhere in his administration, there's a transgender. You got a transgender now running for the governor of California. Bruce Jenner. I'm going to call him by his name. I can get in trouble, y'all. Y'all know that. They could take me off Facebook and YouTube because I call him Bruce Jenner. That's how much they could do that. I can get taken off. I can get censored because they said he's not a man. He's a woman. Y'all hear that? He's not a man. He's a woman. So you have to address him by his transgender name. They got rights. That's what our kids are faced with now. We never had that when we was growing up. In fact, if a boy looked at us kind of strange, you better not. Don't be looking at me like that. Don't you dare. I mean, it was on. But you can't do that now. You can't do that now. And it's in the church. I think it was Kirk Franklin said that the church needs to quit being homophobic. And that they got rights and we shouldn't be. So he says that, but then my book says, if a man lieth with mankind as he does with womankind, it is abomination. So what you going to do about that, Kirk Franklin? I'm going to stand with the book. They might censor me. I'm going to still stand here. You can't get out there on YouTube or Facebook anymore. I'm still going to stand here saying the same thing. Because I'm going to read it out of the book. But the seed has to be sown, which is the word, and it must be sown so that you have knowledge, you're knowledgeable, and you have an understanding. And there's so much in this book. There's so much to learn that you can be here 50 years teaching nonstop and still don't know everything. Still learning and teaching more. 100 years. There's things Daniel said that is being brought out. How long ago did he prophesy? Because Jesus told us to read Daniel and get an understanding. So you can teach and spend years and years on the book of life, because that's what it is, the book of life. But if you don't understand something, then you need to get an understanding. Because your soul is too valuable. It's irreplaceable. You cannot replace your soul with anything else. Nothing in this world. Jesus said, what would a man give in exchange for his soul? He values your soul over all this creation. And you can look at the creation. It's beautiful. I mean, you look at the stars and the moon and the sun by day and his everything he created. And then you look at mankind that he made in his image. And David said, we're fearfully and wonderfully made. And you see all that he's done, but he said, the most valuable thing is your soul. Because he knows about eternity. And we're going to spend eternity somewhere. It's just that where do you want to spend eternity? That's the thing, where you want to spend eternity. So if there's any questions or comments out there, certainly we'll try to answer them. If anybody needs a little more clarity on the verses that we covered on tonight. But if not, then I thank you for coming and say grace and mercy and shalom unto you. And we'll be back on Saturday. in the Sabbath class teaching this Saturday. Most High willing, Brother Rocky would say, if the creek don't rise, I'll be back if the creek don't rise. And I don't really know what that means. I guess something down south somewhere. I guess if it floods, they can't come out. So thank you for coming. And Sister Klinkner had to go get Lawrence, I guess. Okay. She'll be back.